You know who it is. It's Zeus Cruz of Olympia Multimedia, and we're presenting you with another episode of A Word with the World. As you can see, we're in our virtual setting today, and we got a special guest. As you notice on the screen, it's someone familiar to the show, so familiar that he is the first guest to ever reappear on A Word with the World. He is one of one. Great author. You guys know I'm a big fan of his. He is the proud author of the Drowned Realm series. And if you notice behind me, I have like these doorways, these portals, as it were. So if you wanted to go into the first doorway, you'll probably come to bam, the rise of the Red Harbinger, right? And then if you decide to go into portal number two, doorway number two, you're going to be hit with bam, the Ghost of Asher, the second installment. And then if you decide to mosey on along to the third doorway, I hope I'm pointing at it right, you'll come across the third installment, which we're going to be talking about today, which is A World on Fire. He has made such uh, elaborate, very lush, very in-depth world. Lore is built into it, the world building. He's definitely made an impression and a statement, especially on the book circuit at different events. The fans, multitudes are coming in. They've been embracing this series. So please welcome to the show, Mr. Khalid Uddin. Khalid, how we doing today?
Great. It's my pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. Love talking to you about my books, especially since you're such a big fan. Um, and honestly, that as an author, and I'm sure you can attest to that, it's kind of what drives our writing, right? It kind of inspires you to keep going. And that being said, like starting book four, which will be the final one. I feel like this is probably the earliest I've started the next book after finishing the last one. So that feedback, that excitement, it definitely helps.
Awesome. I'm always ecstatic when we're able to get on the show. It's always great to talk with like-minded people, but also too, I'm a writer, you're a writer, author, published author, but also we're fans
Yep.
at the same time too. And especially with this kind of genre, I made it known in the past video segments that we were a part of how it reminds me of some of my other favorite fantasy book series as well.
Yeah.
So you were right up my alley with this series. So I'm definitely blessed, have the privilege and honor of having you on the show so we could talk about it. Again, congratulations to you, Khaled, on another successful book launch with the third installment. Let me put it on the screen again for you guys. It's A World on Fire. Again, the covers instantly grab your attention. So, Khaled, what I would like you to do is to explain to the viewers the intrigue of writing a series. Was this the original plan when developing the concept, or did the story just organically transition into a series?
I knew once I like committed to actually the story that it was going to be a series. Writing book one, I wasn't necessarily sure. I don't think I really cared like how many books it was going to be. I just wanted to get it going to see how it unfolded. And as you've seen with a lot of fantasy, a lot of times the world is just too big, the story is just too big for it to like be able to tie all up in one book. And kudos to those authors who can do that, because it takes a lot of skill to write a complete story, a complete novel, and finish it in one book. But I think it was probably some way about halfway or so between book two, Ghost of Asher, that I knew it would be four books. Just because the scope of the story, everything that I still wanted to be able to do with it, and have enough time to tie everything up. I originally thought like maybe three, but closer to the end of like book two, like there's no way this is finishing in three books. Like the book would have to be like 1,700 pages or something like that to and that was definitely unrealistic for me. So four is just a good you know just a good point where that should satisfy everybody and finish my story in a way that works for me too.
Yeah, and I'm interested to get your insight on this. While writing Ghost of Asher, obviously at some point in your process developing the story, getting close to the end, that you decided, hey, I need to go ahead and make a third installment. Was while making that decision and finishing up Ghost of Asher, did it come about that you started planning ahead on how you were going to lay the foundation on World on Fire, or was it more like once you were done with Ghost of Asher, then you was able to kind of like get more insight within yourself on how you wanted to expand on the story?
I think it's a combination of both. Like in terms of like those two different styles of being like a pantser and a plotter. Like pantsers are the people that just write like as the ideas come to them, whereas the plotters like try to figure everything out first. Um, I'm kind of like a mesh where I always have outlines for like chapters and stories, not to like down to the specific like conversation or page, but just kind of having an idea of where I'm going with it. But then I kind of let the story and the characters unfold like the way they dictate it, like as I'm writing, so that way it's a little more genuine to like how the characters are. And in that sense, like for book three, I knew like certain things had to happen. There were definitely like bigger things and certain events that like were going to be placed in there no matter what. But there were a lot of details that I still like wasn't sure about. And to that end, for the way book two ended, one of the final scenes with MacDoom like didn't really come to me until like writing the book, like in that time, like writing that chapter, writing the end of the story, and it kind of changed the way I wanted to begin World on Fire. So like the beginning was probably the toughest part for me to as far as writing the third book, just because that creative spark kind of sabotaged me in a sense. But also, I put a lot of like energy and effort and emotion into like writing, especially towards the end of Ghost of Asher. And I think I was pretty confident that like a lot of those things that happened towards the end of the book, like the twists, the turns, the reveals, that they were pretty good. And I was worried about like with starting book three, kind of having a letdown. Like where do I go from here, and how do I make sure that this story is still as good as book two? And so it was just trying to have the patience to make sure that the story came out the right way.
That's a big undertaking, and I tip my hats off to you. And that goes for any author that decides that they want to do a whole series. Is the fact of not only with each installment you have to still have the clarity and make sure that the story is cohesive, but most importantly, to with each installment you still make the story interesting enough for the readers that they want to continue to be invested in it. So I noticed Khaled that, or as I felt through reading World on Fire, that the central theme it was about building alliances, specifically certain characters becoming allies against their better judgment, with loyalties instantly coming into question. They have a common enemy, but it seems like certain characters have their own agenda in the process. So could you give the viewers a bit more on the synopsis of the story and its lore?
Sure. Yeah. In that sense, like, it's definitely a fantasy series and a fantasy story, but I've tried, I think throughout with as far as characters and story to always have those real life connections. And the way I see it is, at the start of the story, all these main characters, it's an ensemble cast, they're kind of thrust into this position, especially the ones who, have these like special abilities, these magical abilities. It's not like they necessarily asked for it, even though it's been given to them. And I think that being said, in real life, the same thing kind of happens to us. We're like put in roles sometimes that we didn't ask for, and the fun of writing stories like this is how the characters handle that kind of stuff. I like to compare it to like just going to work, having a job. Everybody there comes from different backgrounds. They have different motivations for even wanting to be at this job. Even though there's a goal, within your job, like that everybody has to achieve. We all still have our own agendas. We all still have things that we want to achieve for ourselves. We all have our certain outlooks about how hard we want to work. Whether leadership is strong or weak. And even those biases and viewpoints of like the people we're working with. We don't necessarily like everybody all the time, and so I kind of tried to use that aspect in going into how like these characters play out, because in the first book, a lot of our main characters are naive, they're new to this, and so I think they're maybe a little more eager to work together. But as the story goes on, they go through different things, they realize certain truths or handle things different ways. Sometimes they let emotions get the best of them, and it definitely changes the dynamics of how they interact with each other or how they see each other. And so those alliances that you mentioned, or those different agendas, it just kind of came naturally as the characters develop, and it kind of made a lot of fun to toy with these characters throughout the series about who's grouped together, who's traveling with whom, and just seeing those different personalities play off each other and pan out, because it's not supposed to always just be agreeable or fun, and that's kind of the fun of writing it from an author standpoint, is putting these two characters, these two personalities together, and just letting it play out, because sometimes it makes things awkward or complicated.
That's a great thing that I noticed with your books is just the fact that you were able to incorporate real life experiences into a fantasy world. I think sometimes with like different authors, especially of that genre of fantasy, they tend to make it too whimsical in nature. And it would have been nice if they would have incorporate some real life experiences
Right.
and inject that into them. Because at the end of the day, not every character that you have in your story has some kind of powers
Right.
or they're enchanted in some way, shape, or form. Like, so it'd be nice to just have like that human element sometimes, even if you're writing in the realm of fantasy. So even with the character development, we're going to get more into that because Khaled, I admire how you was able to create these multiple factions, excuse me, within your lore and inject so many character arcs, but didn't make the story feel oversaturated at all. So how can a writer add substance without making the story too complex?
I think that's where the plotting part comes into play, is just having strategy, like outlining and planning ahead. Book one, we follow three characters throughout the story, and obviously there are still a lot of side characters, a lot of secondary characters, and characters that you're meant to care about, but you really see the world through these three characters' eyes. And I mean, that was intentional for a couple reasons. I was new to writing, and it was easier to manage for me, to make those ones the focal points. But at the same time, like, it also made it easier on the readers to like not feel like too much was being thrown at them in a short amount of time, right? And I think like it makes it easier, at least from my viewpoint, to expand on that as the story goes on, because you're following these same characters throughout this long arc, or these long arcs, and you start to get more familiar with who's who, and that's when you can start implementing some more viewpoints, some more points of view throughout the story, because you're familiar with them, like who this character is, what their motivation and background and everything is. And so the strategy comes in where you kind of have to, I want to say, be cognizant of when people are appearing and how often, and like like, so for instance, like which characters are going to appear in which chapters, and not like say oversaturate a certain part of the book with just like one character or two characters all the time. Just like change the POV from chapter to chapter, so that way you're still keeping everybody in mind. And I think that was, honestly, that's one of the toughest things to start off each book, is figuring out like, okay, when does this person come in, and what, and I think like as a creative, as a writer, you have to have the patience to figure that out before you start writing, just because, like, if you fall into that trap of not planning out beforehand, then you're going to have to kind of go back and figure out, all right, is this like, am I putting too many people into this where people aren't going to keep track of it? And at the same time, that's also the fun part of killing characters off, is you don't have to worry about that viewpoint anymore. So sometimes it serves multiple purposes. It serves like the storyline, but also it kind of helps you rein some things in, as far as like focusing on too many different people. And also, I mean, not to ramble on, but that's also the benefit of a series, is you know, you have the time, you have the pacing to be able to do all those different characters justice. So that way it doesn't feel so convoluted that they're all just thrown on top of each other in, like, say, a standalone book.
Well, Khaled, I'm definitely taking some mental notes, because I'm currently working on my next book. A lot of you guys know I'm working on my first actual novel. So, not to give too much away, but it's up kind of like up the alley of what Khaled's doing. Uh, the book is comprised of, or the main story plot is involving these three factions
Okay.
that I created within the story. And I'm just noticing, like, again, each faction has their own set of characters. And besides the fact that you're trying to create identity for each character, you don't want characters to be too similar in nature. You want the characters to have their own personalities, so forth and so on. But to your point about how to create these character arcs and start developing the stories, and then that point that you just made about how the frequency of certain characters, when should, you know what I mean, like, does it fit the flow of the story? If I'm going to
Right,
continue moving on with this character, when's a good time to inject a new character
right.
into the story, you know what I mean, to kind of expand on the lore. So that's the difficulty that I'm having right now. It's just kind of like, you know not get too oversaturated, not be too much overdevelopment of characters, but it's about that timing. Like, I want it to be organic, has a nice flow, and a consistency there as far as when you're injecting a new character. That's the difficulty that I have. So I'm glad you brought up the points that you did, being that you're an expert on doing this. You know what I mean? I need all the help I could get, Callie. You know what I mean?
But at the same time, just piggybacking off of that, like, I also, try to be conscious of, like, all right, is the reader going to be tired of this character? Like, do they need a break from this character for a bit? And I think sometimes, like,
Yeah,
thinking
that's a good
about, like,
point.
people's reading habits, like, okay, this is probably like a good point where they might put down the book, and when they pick up, it's a different character, so maybe they don't necessarily have to worry about remembering everything that just happened with that person, because they're moving to a different viewpoint. So I try to think of that as well, as far as the reading experience too, and I think it helps to keep things in perspective too.
That's a good point, and I hope you guys are taking it in. If you decide, for any of you people who are aspiring to be authors, published authors, or you decide you're putting a series together, I know I'm taking all these points in because, like I said, I really want this to work. I think I have a good idea. I think it's something that will resonate with people. I think it's something unique. Um, because the genre that I'm in is Greek mythology,
Oh, nice.
but I'm putting like my own twist on it. So hopefully people can, resonate with it and think it'd be unique or whatnot. But man, it's a hard undertaking of having so many moving pieces. You're creating factions, you're creating different groups, you got all these different characters. You want to make these characters seem interesting, but at the same time, you don't want to overutilize them. You want all the characters. It's kind of like a TV show. Each character you want to kind of have allow them to have their own spotlight.
Right.
And that's the great thing about your book series. I just feel like every character you injected, like they just have their moment in the book
Yeah.
versus they kind of get lost in the background a little
Right.
bit. You know what I mean? So, to the credit to your skill set, Khaled, you do an amazing job at that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So, another aspect of your book, Khaled, that I found interesting, and I'm just going to jot down a few things, and then
Mhm.
maybe you can elaborate on it. Number one is how each chapter begins with a verse from the book of origin. I hope I pronounced that right. Okay. Number two, the inclusion of maps to highlight the locales in your story. Number three, the bold print highlighting certain excerpts of your book that I believe you did that for like greater emphasis. And then number four, which I found very useful, was an appendix to describe the different backdrops and the characters in your story. What made you include these subtle nuances in your book? Did you feel it was needed to build the lore, the world that you were creating?
Um, Absolutely, and for some of those things you mentioned more so than others. For instance, starting with the verses at the beginning, it's no secret that this whole series, faith and spirituality is very crucial to the characters, and so part of having those, like, it's, I guess, their version of the Bible. These, like, this book of origin being the central deity of this world, this universe, and so it kind of served two purposes. One, just to kind of reinforce that idea that it all ties back to this. I mean, that's where the magic is coming from in the first place. But also, it was kind of like just a fun thing for me to give the reader an idea of like what the theme of the chapter might be. Like each verse is like specifically chosen to kind of set up that chapter, so you have an idea maybe of like what it's going to be about or what might be coming, like in a general sense, in a broad sense. So that was the idea behind there, and it's just kind of been a fun. I thought it was like a different approach, because it wasn't something I had necessarily seen before. I've definitely seen, for instance, with like Brandon Sanderson, where he starts certain book chapters with like quotes from characters like of long ago, from that lore. And this like was an approach that I thought like worked really well for my book. So that's why that's there. Um, as far as the maps, I mean, that kind of is fantasy 101, right? Especially if you're building your own world. Especially as a visual person myself, like it's nice to be able to look back at that and say, okay, this is where they're going, or this is what nation this character is from, or this is how far they had to travel. It just kind of created a nice reference point, for readers to be able to follow along with. And it's kind of like the same thing like that we were just talking about before with kind of not overexposing characters, because, or readers, excuse me, because like in book one, even book two, there's one map, right? Just Asher. It's the central location, and I felt like I always knew that the world would expand like as the series went along, but I didn't want to do too much too soon. So that's why book three, we have two new maps, two new parts of the world that we see, just so that way, now that like through two books, the readers are comfortable with like the world, and everything is recognizable. It's not necessarily too much to put those two new like regions in place, because they've probably heard about some of these places already, and at least there's some familiarity. So it was kind of just like a slow build, and then even with book four, there's going to be another like new map, but again, places that have already been mentioned, but at least now you get to see it. So that way, it's just like paced like slowly enough that it's not too much for the reader. And even with like the geography, that's all based on mostly like real life like cultures and places. Obviously the names and things have been changed, but a big thing for me was trying to highlight like underrepresented or not easily recognizable places throughout the world. That like readers might still like look at like a name or a town or an idea and realize like, oh, that's this culture, I know that, or this name like that translates to this. So that was like one of the reasons behind that. Definitely one of the MOs I had in writing, just to inject like, and it's not a dig at anybody, because fantasy has traditionally like taken place in like a different version of like England, where everybody speaks like with a British accent, and I kind of wanted to get away from that, just being a minority myself, and throw just like some fresh perspective on that. So that's a big part of the maps as well. I think the other thing you mentioned was like bolding some of the conversations, right? So that came about because some of the conversations happen within characters' minds, and it was I want to say an easy way and also a functional way of showing that like there are two different voices happening inside a character's head, and being able to differentiate for the reader like which voice belongs to whom. So it also, I feel like the bolding kind of like puts a certain emphasis on that other voice. It makes it a little more powerful, because some of those other voices are not necessarily like a human character or a regular character, so it kind of helped to drive that home as well. um, And then lastly, the appendix, right? So, I mean, as we've kind of gone back to over and over again, there's a lot going on in these stories, different characters, different places, and there was a 5 year gap between Harbinger and Ghost of Asher, and not necessarily because I wanted there to be, but just because of life and stuff. But definitely something I was conscious of when writing book two, like people are going to forget a lot about a lot of these things, and with like that much time, like as much as I wish it was the case, nobody was really like rereading my book over and over again until Ghost of Asher came out, and making it like the focal point of their lives. So of course people are going to forget like some characters and places and all that. So it just seemed like a very smart move to include that. So it gave people a quick refresher on like, oh, who's this person, or what's their ability, or what's this place, what's this name, stuff like that. So that way, you didn't feel like you had to reread the book like after a few years to remember everything.
That's amazing. And just to let you know, Kelly, I'm going to be using some of these things for my next book.
Absolutely.
Because I just think it's fantastic. I look at the maps and it reminds me so much of like I'm a huge fan of like open world games.
Okay.
And like for instance, like Skyrim. I'm a huge fan of Skyrim, the Elder Scrolls, the world that they created with that. But the thing that I love the most is the fact that after you get through the prologue of the game, which is like your basic introduction to the game,
Sure.
it allows you to like it opens up the map. So I go onto the map and I get to see like this whole world that I get to explore, and I'm just anticipating, you know what I mean? Like I can't wait to go to this section
Yeah.
because I know what's going to be over there. I can't wait to go over here because I
Right.
know that's where all the dungeons are, and I get to like explore that and see what I can get into. So providing something like that in the book is great. I don't necessarily need like a bunch of illustrations
Right.
per se because I can visualize the characters and the settings in my head
Yeah.
as I'm reading. But it's great to just have that map because I'm like anticipating as I'm looking like, oh man, I'm going to this area. You know what I mean? I'm going into to this location.
Yeah.
And then you kind of like build that anticipation within yourself to like, what's going to happen here? You know what I mean?
And
And then, oh, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, even from a writing standpoint, it definitely helps you to keep yourself in check because, like, for instance, if you
Yeah.
in one chapter wrote that it took like a week for this character to travel from here to there, right? But now, later on in the book, they're traveling somewhere else, and you have to kind of determine that like timeline. It kind of helps you out as the writer to figure
Mm,
out, okay, this trip should only take a couple days, or like it shouldn't be that long, or it makes more sense for them to like follow the river, or whatever it is. It's definitely a tool
mhm.
for the writer as well.
And the other thing too that I like too was just like the part about beginning each chapter with a verse from the Book of Origin.
Yeah.
Um, I know with the book that I'm currently working on, the beginning of each chapter, I try to write it in the way where each chapter is narrated basically through a different central character.
Okay.
And the main thought that they have that they kind of like want to convey, that's how I'm starting each chapter. It's
Oh, that's
just like a
awesome.
brief thought that they have in their head. And then as you read through the chapter, you'll see how that thought expands
Right.
and why that character thinks the way they think through that thought. So just to let you know, I'm just putting it out there. Those are some of the things that I took from your book that I kind of like piggybacking off a little bit.
No, that's good because
Hopefully, yo, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, like, I mean, at the end of the day, um, you know, readers are smart. They like picking up on that kind of stuff, and it also helps them
Yeah,
focus on certain things and form their theories and predictions and everything like that. So I think that's. I mean, the fun part of reading is your author left you this little tidbit and like, okay, why does this matter, or where do we go from here? So it's definitely a great
yeah,
strategy.
definitely. So for you guys out there again, watching viewers aspiring to put your books together, I hope you're writing down some notes. These are some gems right here of just really putting different aspects and components of your book to bring the story to life. I mean, that's pretty much the main purpose when you're writing, especially when you're doing so much like world building and you're creating so much lore, is to bring it to life. It doesn't make no sense to have all these different characters and subplots, but the overall story is kind of bland, boring, cliche-ish, so to speak. Like you got to kind of like put your imprint into it to kind of make the story come alive,
Right.
right?
Absolutely.
So, Khaled, this is the part here of this interview that I'm definitely, especially interested in getting your insight and thoughts on because it's becoming a huge thing, especially in the last, probably like the last couple years.
Okay.
It's been like, it's been, it started off as a trend, but
Yeah.
now it's turning into a something that is evolving to something completely different. And I think you guys know what I'm talking about. It's AI. You
Okay.
can't run
I
away
had a
from
feeling
it. It's
it.
almost in it's almost in every facet of our life
Yeah.
just about, right?
Right.
So AI is starting to become more of a contributing factor when it comes to content creation. And yes, it has reached the world of literature and writing,
Right.
and putting books together. So Khaled, what are your thoughts on the matter? I mean, do you feel it could be a useful resource or do you feel it takes too much creative control from the creator?
All of the above. So, here's where I stand. I think in the creativity aspect, I don't think it necessarily has any place, and I say that because art is supposed to be human, right? Like the whole reason that art exists is because of the struggle, because of the conflicts, the obstacles we face, and like to kind of, I guess, go off on a tangent. Like I recently read this like tidbit about Prince, the musician, um, and it wasn't even AI. It was he was very strongly against other people covering his songs, and I was like, oh, that's kind of like a messed up thing to do. Like, why would? But then I read his reasoning, and he said, every song I write has been about something I've been through or something super meaningful to me, and how can anybody else capture that by just covering my song? They don't know the struggle, the reason behind any of this. They're just going through the motions, and it makes a lot of sense because like it works the same way for AI. Like if there's like no human element behind that creation, then it's not art. And I strongly stand by that. Like I mean, the whole point of art is to um, capture the human struggle. This exists like because of what we've been through, and because of what we faced in our life. And that being said, um, I think AI can be a useful resource if used in the right way. So, for instance, not too long ago, I was speaking to another author where she was really struggling with like finding like some like plot holes and things like that in her story. So what she did with her manuscript was she just like plugged it into, I don't remember if it was like ChatGPT or whatever, and like asked it to find like certain things that she was looking for, so that way she could fix it up. And I think in that regard, like sometimes that can be helpful, like again as a resource. Not saying like rewrite the story or what should I do here, but tell me what's not adding up or tell me like like what you're finding. And I understand that maybe like sometimes that might take the opportunity away from like say a beta reader or something like that. But it's I think at the end of the day maybe like she was pressed for time and didn't necessarily like have the ability to wait for somebody to read through the whole thing and pick up on all that. And but it's again like it's not like she was using it to have the story written for her. It was definitely a tool to improve on the story, like that she was still going to use her creativity, to fix things up, to polish it. And I think in that regard, it can be helpful. Just like as a supplement, but definitely not in the sense that it should be replacing art or like becoming a way for people to just make money off of like creation in that sense.
Khaled, it's crazy because it's almost like you're like Charles Xavier of the X-Men. Like you just read my mind. We're right in tune with each other. I totally agree with everything you just said. If you're going to use AI as a complement
Right.
to you, then that's perfect. At the end of the day, um, like with my business, Olympian Multimedia, we
Mhm.
do utilize AI to a certain extent
Right.
because it does help with productivity.
Right.
It does help with bettering work processes. better in strengthening your workflow within your team.
Yeah.
It does help with like other components like data management, for example. It's a very useful tool. When it comes to creation, I want to be in total control and be hands on with
Yep.
it. I'm not saying AI can't be used to help you generate ideas
Yeah.
because we all have creator's block. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sometimes we have writer's block. So we just need something real quick, just a little tidbit to kind of just get them creative juices going.
Sure.
What I don't like is how it's starting to become like the end all for people,
Yeah.
where it's like, yes, I want to be a content creator,
Hmm.
I want to be an author, but I don't want to go through all the rigors of putting this book together. We'll
Yeah.
just keep it at the book level since that's
Yeah.
what we're talking
Sure.
about. I don't want to go through all the rigors of trying to put this manuscript together. But the beauty of writing the book was the journey
Yeah.
that you took to write it. So if you're relying so much on AI, then you're robbing yourself of this journey and these experiences. These are memories you're going to have for your entire lifetime to know that, wow, I put this book together and now it's published and other people are enjoying it. Like nobody can rob you of that. And I feel like if you if you're going to be dependent on AI, then you're doing a disservice to yourself.
Right. And I don't understand how like you can enjoy that like success, if you didn't put the work in the first place, because that's I think the satisfying part is you put all this energy, all this time, everything else into putting this thing together as a creative. Like I can't like necessarily call it success if you didn't do that like to come up with that final product, and so like basically you just kind of it kind of works the same way, I guess, with music, where you just kind of sampled somebody else's like music without giving them credit, and then you made a new song. But it's like, well, where was your talent then? So what
Yeah. I mean, that's a really good point, Khaled. I mean, a lot of you viewers know I'm a music producer. Big component of Olympian is that we produce music. And that's a big no-no
Yeah.
that I talk with the team. We do not use samples at all. Everything is created organically, it's created from scratch. I'm not a firm believer of that. I hear a lot of that on the radio today. That's why I'm not really into like new music
Right.
now because it just seemed like they're just sampling old stuff
Yeah.
and they just kind of configure
Like
just a couple
tweak a
things in
little
the
bit. Yeah.
production and now all of a sudden, look, okay, I give you it. You got a hit on your hands. I give you all the kudos in the world for that. But to me, I can't I don't sleep well at night
Right.
knowing that the main component of what I created stemmed from something else,
Yeah.
especially when we're talking about AI. Because what we were talking about with your books is that what I loved about them is that even though you're in the fantasy genre, is that you incorporated that human spirit,
Right.
them human characteristics. That's something you can't get from
You
AI.
can't reproduce
At
that.
the end
Yeah.
of the day, it's just an algorithm
Yep.
based off whatever you input, right? But it's not really giving like that human sediment into your creation.
Yeah.
And I wish more and more people saw it that way, Khaled. But unfortunately, we live in a society where it's fast paced. They
Yeah.
want quick results. So it's kind of sad that it's starting to steer toward that, where it's like AI is like the end all. Look, AI did this for me. I just tapped in a couple keywords or phrases or whatever, tapped on a couple buttons, and boom, here we go.
Right.
Um, it's kind of unfortunate. I feel like in the future, like I love going to bookstores. BAM is like one of my favorite stores.
Uh-huh.
And it's unfortunate that I feel like we're getting to the point when I'm going to go in there and I don't know if this book is AI or if this really came from the author.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's a scary thought because I want to get the insight from the author.
Right. Yeah.
I don't really want something so much created by an algorithm.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it's tough.
It's definitely complicated. I feel like recently a lot of people have been pushing back on against it, and coming out, and even influential people like bigger companies have been stating like there's no place for that in creativity. So hopefully the movement just gets bigger where um, you know it dissuades people from trying to do that.
Yeah, and just just another note for you guys out there, for you viewers out there, I am not anti AI.
Right.
Like I'm on this huge campaign. I do utilize AI to a certain extent. I'm just, I think me and Khaled are just trying to explain to you guys is that we're not going to use it as the end all.
Right. It doesn't
You
replace
know,
art. Yeah.
we're trying to, yeah, we're just trying to encourage you to like, if you're going to go down this path and you want to be creative and you're putting your process together, whatever it is, art form that you get into, the biggest enjoyment that you could get out of it is the journey,
Yeah.
the experiences that you create as you're putting together your project. I
Absolutely.
mean, that's something, that's a beautiful thing. And I don't take that for granted at all. I just have all these memories of being in the studio and I'm working with different people and we're collaborating and we're just feeding off each other's energy. I mean, you can't get that from AI.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So, but each their own, viewers. We we still love you. If you're gonna end up using AI a lot, so be it. You know what I mean? We still love you, but just remember, it's about the journey
There
too.
you go.
Try to gain them experiences or create them experiences. So, good points, Khaled, that you made.
Thanks.
So, Khalid, I would like you for the viewer, to the viewers, provide some specifics on what you utilize when developing your story concept, whether it be different types of writing tools, resources, or different types of visuals. You know, sometimes we need, like we were talking about, you get writer's block, you need a little bit of inspiration, you need something to kind of get them creative juices going.
Yep.
Is there any type of tools or resources that you use?
I wouldn't necessarily say tools. My biggest resource, my biggest muse is music. Um, from the get go, that's like what's put me into like the zone, the mood, to the point where when I started writing, I had playlists for each chapter. Just to get like the right tone I wanted, just to get my mind in that like
Oh, that's
right
pretty
place.
cool.
Yeah. As I've kind of gotten to be a better writer and gotten more used to the process, it's more like I have a longer playlist just for each book. And we're talking like about a good like 100 songs that I just like cycle through as I'm writing, just to capture like certain
Mhm.
feels. And it's not even like a specific genre. Like the second like a lyric or a beat or a certain rhythm hits me and like I know it has an impact, then it's being put on there. And that like has varied from everything from like Metallica to like the Jonas Brothers to Katy Perry, or like Biggie, whatever it is. Like as long as like I feel a certain connection to it, then it helps. And I think that's a big part of um, resources, for being a writer is, being open-minded enough to understand like, okay, this is helpful and I can use this. So even beyond music, like, sometimes I like to take a step back, like, if I'm facing a lull with writing and, just watch TV or, whatever it is. And, I think it kind of just happens like automatically at this point where I recognize like good writing or good storylines in what I'm watching, and I'd be like, oh wow, that I really like how they did that, like how like they paced it, and this came to be, or how they injected this character into the story, or how they tied everything up. And sometimes you're not even looking for it, and it kind of just shows up for you naturally. So I think as far as those resources go, you have to be willing to find inspiration wherever it comes, and be open to new experiences and new things. And that's something that's definitely helped me as a writer. And I don't know if it goes without saying, but reading other books too, reading what other people put out there, not to necessarily copy, but just to see how they were successful in pulling something off, or even like what didn't work. And I hate to say, like, I'm not gonna put anybody down, but there's definitely books that I've read where it's like, I want to like this book, but it was too much of a tell, not instead of show, or I didn't really resonate with this character. Maybe they didn't go into enough depth with them or whatever. And again, like, what good or bad, everything helps to kind of like craft, like shape your writing, and hone the craft, and just to make you a better writer. And I think that's, going back to the AI thing. That's the benefit of seeing like other things humans have created, was seeing what worked well, what didn't. So that way you can kind of tailor those things to what works best for you.
It's scary, Khalid, how similar we are. I must have been your brother from a past life. You know what I mean?
I'll take it.
Uh, because I pull from music as well.
Yeah,
Um, Again, we're just going to keep it in the confines of like writing,
sure.
and the big component here is about storytelling. And there's just certain artists out there that does such a remarkable job incorporating that storytelling element into their music. So Uh, I don't have an extensive playlist like you do. At this point about putting your story together and your writing process, but I do pull from 3 different sources,
Okay.
very distinct sources. So, I like all musics,
Yeah,
but at all genres of
sure.
music, but
Yep.
I'm definitely a hip hop head for the
Yep.
most part. So I definitely pull a lot from Nas and Eminem.
Okay.
They're my 2 favorite
Yeah.
rappers. So and the biggest thing with both of them is the storytelling
Yeah.
ability. The way they're able to craft these stories, and they invoke a lot of emotion,
Yeah.
but it also provides a lot of perspective. Like it kind of like makes you look outside the box, so to speak. And then another artist that I look to is a band called Rush.
Oh
They're
yeah.
kind of like
Sure.
an old school band, but they do an amazing job of creating like these whole worlds, through their music,
Yeah.
through the soundscapes. Their stories are very in depth, and then just the way they orchestrate the music to go with their lyrics, it just creates like this mind blowing experience. I want to give a shout out to a good friend of mine, Sean Stone, aka the Barbasian. He's the one that put me on to that. That's his favorite band.
Okay.
He put me on to it. I wasn't into it at first, Khaled. I was like, "What you got me listening to? Like, get me out of this car. I don't wanna listen to it no more." But over time, I listened more and more to it, and it's like they're starting to be one of my favorite bands.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to, like, catch up because they got a pretty long discography,
Oh
so I'm
yeah.
trying to catch up and, like, listen to all their music. But also too, not only about the authors that you were talking about, but I also pull a lot of inspiration from comic books.
Yeah.
I'm an avid, comic book reader, and I'm a huge Batman fan.
Okay.
So, if you come to my studio, I got Batman memorabilia, like, everywhere
Okay.
around here. Um, but there's, like, certain series or certain comics that I pull a lot of inspiration from. Like, one in particular is called Doomsday Clock.
Okay.
And the reason why I like that one a lot is because they were able to incorporate not only Batman, but Superman, but also another team into the story.
Mhm.
They incorporated the Watchmen. I don't
Okay.
know if you're familiar with the Watchmen, but particularly Dr. Manhattan
Okay.
was like a main focal point or main character that they pulled from the Watchmen. So the way they were able to incorporate all these, especially from like different groups and different storylines and different comics, it definitely helps me to expand on what I'm writing and not be so afraid to like inject new things
Right.
into the story.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, the beauty of it is, right, Callie, if it doesn't work, you can just erase it
Yeah.
and write it over again.
There you go. That's what editors are for too. They'll tell you if.
There you go. Good point.
Yep.
So, Callie, I would like to know, and I'm pretty sure the viewers would like to know, how would you measure the difficulty level? Like, if we had to put this between 1 and 5, 5 being very, 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 very difficult to craft not only a unique world, but to present it in the series. So if you had to rate it between 1 and 5, how would you put it?
um. Ooh, that's complicated.
Yeah, I
So
put you on the spot. There you
yeah.
go. Yeah.
I don't want to say five, because I think it comes down to understanding the situation. All right, and trusting yourself, right? Because I think it's a recurring theme, and I don't think it necessarily gets overdone. But the beauty of the human element of art is that it comes from you and your experience, and everything that you've been through. And I think as long as you um, keep that in mind, then that uniqueness shows anyway because it's coming from you. And I think one of the reasons why my world is the way it is because I've kind of trusted myself to do it the way I wanted and let it come from like me and what's important to me and what I wanted to put out there. So in that sense, I think if you're willing to let it be your voice and let it come like specifically from you, then it's not as hard as you think. I would say, if we're putting a number on it, probably a three, because at the end of the day, it's you, it's your world, and that's what that's why people are reading. Like one of the reasons people are reading anyway, like a specific author, it's because what you're putting out there is different than anybody else. You can read, sure, you can read a fantasy story, and any fantasy story will have similar themes or similar elements, right? But it's different from one author to the next as far as like what they're putting out there because it's coming from them, coming from wherever they've been in their journey. Now the hard part is getting it all out there and staying committed to that. Just remembering that this is your story and you're not doing it to please everybody else. And I think that's one of the things a lot of authors can agree on is like you have to remember that the story is coming from you and you're not writing it to please the whole world. You're writing this story because you want to write it, and it's going to have the ending that you want, not because it's meant to please like as many as people as possible, but because it's the way you wanted to do it. And so I think that's the hardest part is keeping that part in mind, that you're not trying to please everybody. You're working on what makes sense for you and doing it the way you want to do it.
That's a great segue to go into now we're at the tail end of our interview, Khaled, and to expand upon what you just said. For again, talking to the viewers out there that are looking to create their own or maybe their first series, or even to those out there who put out a few, could you name three vital factors that a writer would need to consider and remember when they're putting together and adapting a series?
Sure. I think the first part is, something I already tell a lot of people, and that's like it's kind of like a twofold type of thing, where you have to be willing to share your work with other people and get feedback, right? Because your story, no matter how good it sounds to you, you still need to know how it comes across to other people. And that's like part of that is also there's the benefit of making connections with other people anyway. But you I think writing, it's going to go one of two ways. We're either going to think it's like amazing, or we're going to think, oh, this sucks, like who's going to read this? And that's why it's important to get other points of view, just to get something realistic, because I mean, not everybody's going to think the same way or pick up on things the same way. So you get, some honest, I guess, like I said, feedback about, how, like, whether what you intended is actually coming across. So it's helpful. And I think the other part of that, is being open-minded to the criticism. You definitely want, excuse me, feedback from people who will give you honest and constructive responses. And so you have to be open to the criticism. You can't walk into like any interaction thinking like, all right, this person is going to think it's the best, and if they don't say that, then they're stupid. You have to be open to what people like, genuinely have to say about your work. I think the other, like another or second thing is staying committed to it, like good or bad. Um, I think creativity and art all have their ebbs and flows, and some days you're going to feel it, some days you're not. And just staying committed to it, just like keeping up with it. It's like anything else, whether it's a hobby or a talent or a sport or whatever. The more you stick with it, one, the easier it gets to get into that routine and making sure you're doing it on a regular basis. And some days that'll look like 100 words, some days that'll look like 1,000, but like staying committed to it, just kind of helps it stay fresh in your mind, and makes like kind of keeps you in check that you're still working towards it, if that makes sense. And then
It
uh,
makes perfect sense.
the last
And Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say the
I don't
last
mean to
thing I
cut
was
you
going to
off.
say is, kind of goes along with that. I think being new to writing for a lot of people, we're under this perception that if you're not writing, you're not being productive, and I think that goes with any creative. If you're not actually producing, then it's not productive, and that's like the farthest thing from the truth. Just because there's a lot of world building that goes on, outlining, just planning or whatever it is, or even researching. And sometimes productivity doesn't mean words on a page. It means like you did something else. And to that extent, sometimes productivity means like giving yourself a break too. Maybe you're just burnt out and you don't have it in you, and it'll help to take a step back for like a day or a week or whatever it is. And there's so many like people like with huge followings and small followings, like on social media, that'll tell you like you're still a creative if you're not like making art every day, and that's absolutely true. So that's definitely something to always keep in mind.
It's a good point because just to transition into like video content, like for like YouTubers, a big component is like how quick can you put these videos out? Because this is just as quick as you put one out, it's just as quick as people forgot that one,
Yeah.
and now they're on to the next video. What do you got new for me? And I think that's a good point to know. Like we live in this world where we're so obsessed with social media. Social media has made instant divas and like wannabe celebrities
Yeah.
out of people where they feel like they have to upload every aspect of
Every
their
little thing.
lives
Yeah.
onto social media. And it's like, I think that's a great point, and I hope your viewers definitely take it in. There's nothing wrong with like putting stuff on social media. I mean, me and Khalid do it all the time. But just because we might go through a time period where we're not really uploading a lot of content or a lot of videos doesn't mean we're not working toward our craft, working toward our art form. I love the point that you made about there's other aspects, especially when it comes to writing. Sometimes you do need to do some research, especially if you're going to a specific genre or maybe a specific topic. Maybe you don't have all the understanding behind it because you definitely don't want to write something that can end up offending someone
Right.
or making them feel some type of way or doing something that is it you didn't mean it to be derogatory in
Yeah.
nature, but it ends up being that way
Right.
because you just lack that understanding.
Yeah.
And then also too, all the ins and outs, right? Like with your books, you got to worry about how to format the maps and how to put together appendix
Yep.
and again, the character development, building on the lore. I'm writing a series. I gotta continue to make this story interesting, especially if we're going to keep continuing on with installments. There's a lot to it,
Right.
and I think people don't really look at it when it comes to writing. It's just like I know I come across a few people that's kind of like, well, I don't really see the big deal,
Yeah.
Zeus. I mean, you're just writing words on a paper. You know what I mean? Like, you're just putting some thoughts together. You making up characters. Anybody can make up names and whatnot. And I'm like, I mean, you're on the right track, but it's definitely a little bit more to it.
Yeah. And
So I love that you brought that point about like, even if you don't see somebody working, it doesn't mean they're not working.
right.
You know what I mean? They just might be putting their mind towards something else.
Yeah, I mean, for from an author's point of view, like that's something people don't see is all the notebooks, the spreadsheets, the whiteboards, like all that time, the research.
And I got
You see
plenty
the
of
finished
that.
product, but you don't know everything that went into it. So yeah,
Definitely, man. And Khaled, once again, man, this was just a great interview. It was great talking with you.
yeah, it's always fun.
You provided so much insight that I hope you viewers pulled out your notepads and took note to. Khaled, give the reminder to the viewers again where they can find your books.
Sure. All three are available on Amazon, on BarnesandNobles.com. I believe they're even available on Walmart. Um, you can go to my website, KhalidUddin.com, to get the link to them as well. So, yeah, definitely have your options. And if you don't want to go online, then you can always catch me at the next event. Um, as far as actually, I have one coming down.
Yeah, what's new on the horizon for you?
So yeah, I will be down in Atlantic City for the New Jersey, like it's the Librarians Convention. in February. It's
Okay,
about a month from
awesome.
now. Yeah, it's a 2 or 3 day event, so I'm excited for that. Just one, it's like librarians throughout the state that are all looking for books for their inventory, and then just making those connections as well. So that should be a fun time.
That's awesome.
Aside from that, working on book 4 now. So I think that's probably about 2 years away. Just because of the scope of the book and how much time it'll
Oh man, I guess I can hold on here, Khaled.
Yeah, you got your own writing to work on anyway, so that'll hold you over.
Yeah, that's true. That's very, very true. I got a whole lot of other things I got to work on, but it's great to hear that you at least got the next installment. It's
Yeah,
it, it's in the works,
yep,
so we
absolutely.
got something to look forward to.
I'm starting to
For
get into
you
that groove.
viewers out.
So, what's that?
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Oh, I was just going to say for you viewers out there. I mean, do yourself a favor, please. If you're going to go ahead and get Khaled's books, get the whole collection, please. Don't just get one book. Forget about the other two.
Of course,
Let's
yeah.
get all three of them at the same time. It just makes sense, and then you could take your time
There you go.
because we're 2 years out from the
Yeah,
4th one,
exactly.
you know what I mean? So you got plenty of time to go ahead and read these 3 fine books and get lost in the Drowned Realm series.
There we go.
Because again, Khaled, you're the exceptional writer. I
Thank
know you probably hear it 1,000 times, and I know I'm, you know, constantly giving you your flowers and your praise, but you
I
deserve
appreciate
it.
it.
You
Yep.
deserve all the success in the world. This is a phenomenal series. If you're a fan of fantasy guys, you're definitely not going to be disappointed with this. This is a definitely an adventure and a true reading experience. So do yourself a favor and get these books and pre-order his 4th one. Don't make me hunt you down. But anywho, Callie, I appreciate you being on the show.
My
It's
pleasure.
always amazing for you to come on the show. And again, nothing but success to you. I
Thank you for
really,
having me.
I'm really, really pulling for you to get even more successful.
Thank you.
Hopefully, you find some more readers out there that'll enjoy your books.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And I
I mean,
appreciate you being on the show.
yeah, it's my pleasure, and I love the exposure and the opportunity that you're giving me. So it's always fun to chat and talk, and can't wait to do it again. Next time.
Oh yeah, we're definitely gonna do it for the 4th book.
Yeah,
We're just gonna keep this going.
there we go.
While you're at it, Callie, you might as well go ahead and throw 6 more books in the series. I'm not gonna be mad if you do that, but I understand you got a process. I wouldn't advocate for you to deviate from
I
that.
already have ideas for another series, so like that's the tough part is like
Oh, there we
trying
go.
to rein that in. So, um, but yeah, don't worry. There's more to come anyway. So,
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So again, for you guys out there, you know who it is. It's Zeus Cruz of Olympia Multimedia presenting another episode of A Word with the World with my friend Khalid Uddin, author of the Drowned Realm series. Do yourself a favor and go get the series. And I appreciate you guys tuning in. And only thing left to say is we'll check you later. See you.